You've probably noticed that olive trees and vineyards are planted throughout the Bible. While most plants struggle to survive in the Middle East, olive trees and vineyards thrive in this environment. And one more tree does well here. It's the fig tree. If you'd had a sweet tooth in the biblical era, you'd have to be satisfied with honey, grapes, raisins, and figs. Oh, families loved their fig trees. And prophets like Hosea, Jeremiah, Micah, they all used figs and fig trees as illustrations of Israel. That led to a tradition that connected Israel as a whole to the fig tree. It's a symbol of the nation. Mark tells us the story of Jesus clearing the temple in today's passage. He bookends this story with two encounters with a single fig tree. This is not accidental, so pay attention. In the first encounter, Jesus saw a fig tree and went over in search of fruit. Even though it wasn't yet the main season for figs, it would not have been unusual for a few figs to have been there. They called these the early figs. When Jesus did not find any fruit on this tree, and remember, the prophets had used the fig tree to represent Israel's spiritual leadership, he cursed it. And by the next morning, the fig tree was dead. Let's set the stage for what we find here. If you and I had been eyewitnesses to this miracle and what happened on this day, we would have seen the temple and the Temple Mount in the distance at every moment. It was directly opposite of the Mount of Olives. But if you were expecting that temple to be a place of great spiritual purity and strength, oh, you would have been greatly disappointed. To use fig tree language, there was a noticeable lack of spiritual fruit among the temple leaders in Jerusalem. Spiritual disease and rot was evident in the corruption taking place there. John the Baptist had railed against it. Jesus had done the same. Here's how things worked on the Temple Mount. Everyone was welcome here. You could all come up to the Temple Mount platform. This included Jews and non-Jewish people or Gentiles. It's a very large area, something like 36 acres. Only Jewish people could go past a certain point on the Temple Mount as people got closer to the temple itself. Jewish women had to stop when they reached the outer courtyard of the temple, and Jewish men who were not priests could only advance to the next courtyard. Only Jewish priests were allowed inside the temple, but there were plenty of rules for them too. In other words, this is not a place where you might casually enter and exit at your leisure. You're not going to have the run of the house here. Here's an important visual. The entire Temple Mount was set aside as sacred space. Every square inch of the Temple Mount was reserved for worship and prayer. That's true for Jews, Gentiles, men, women, and people of all ages. It's all sacred space. You want to sell merchandise or exchange money? There are no prohibitions against this as long as it's done in the city. All of the selling was to take place outside of the Temple Mount. But some of the sellers had come up to the Temple Mount and were selling things there. Money was being exchanged like it was normal to have a bank in the place of worship. Animals were making noises and leaving behind, things animals leave behind. The entire arrangement had a really bad smell to it. People were being cheated in the money transactions too. The religious leaders were growing wealthy at the expense of poor pilgrims who had come to Jerusalem to sing, worship, and pray. Jesus marched into this noisy, illegal environment, turned over the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and then physically prohibited anyone from carrying merchandise inside the temple courts. He cried out, "Is it not written that my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations? But you have made it a den of robbers." Jesus was quoting the prophet Jeremiah. Now, if you remember, Jeremiah had seen the destruction of the previous temple. He blamed that destruction on the spiritual corruption of Jerusalem's leaders. Jeremiah had also used an illustration to speak about that corruption. Are you ready for it? God had shown Jeremiah a vision of two baskets of figs. One basket was full of good figs, excellent figs. Listen to it. They were like figs that ripen early. Jesus had been looking for some of those early figs on the Mount of Olives that very morning. Jeremiah's good figs represented the good people of Judah who were now being taken into exile. They would come back to Jerusalem one day, Jeremiah said. But that other basket filled with rotten figs, they were horrible. They couldn't be eaten. The figs stunk. According to Jeremiah, God said those figs represented the leadership of Judah and everyone connected to them. Jesus did not use subtle symbolism to express his displeasure at what he saw on the Temple Mount when he got there. He used a whip. He used his loud voice. He bowed up for a fight, and no one challenged him. Now, sometime later, Simon Peter and the other disciples remembered the day had begun with Jesus cursing a fig tree. It had not produced the good fruit he had expected. And when they next saw that tree, it was withered up. It was dead without hope. Only 40 years after this remarkable day, the temple and all of Jerusalem were destroyed again, just like it had been in Jeremiah's day. Only instead of a 70-year exile for the Jewish people, this time the temple would not be rebuilt. From AD 70 until this day, the Temple Mount has no Jewish temple. That's a lot to chew on, and I hope you can find a few good figs in the things we've covered. I think certainly there's this. It's important how we worship, especially when we worship together. Our singing, our praying, the way we apply biblical principles to our lives, that's so important. And God is watching us as we gather together for this purpose. Or you might say, Jesus is still looking for the good figs among us.